So, the episode kicks off with Rick inventing this device that lets you dive into other people's dreams. His brilliant plan? Sneak into Morty's math teacher Mr. Goldenfold's dreams and plant the idea to give Morty better grades. Morty's just sitting there like, dude, if you had time to build this whole contraption, couldn't you have just helped me with my homework? Meanwhile, Mr. Goldenfold is chilling at home, munching on chips and binge-watching his favorite TV show starring Mrs. Pancakes, the woman of his dreams. Rick and Morty fire up the device, and boom, they're in. Inside Goldenfold's first dream lair, Mrs. Pancakes shows up pushing a cart full of chips, and things are getting hot and heavy between them. Then suddenly, Rick and Morty appear out of nowhere, wielding soda bombs and threatening to blow up a plane unless the teacher changes Morty's grades. But here's the thing. In his own dream, Goldenfold can do whatever he wants. So he just pulls out a gun and starts shooting. Rick's forced to grab Mrs. Pancakes as a hostage, which makes the teacher completely lose it, and the whole dream starts collapsing around them. But wouldn't you know it, Goldenfold manages to follow them in, and now he's got this giant pot of lava ready to cook them alive. The grandfather-grandson duo quickly dives into Mrs. Pancake's second dream lair to escape. Rick explains that in this lair, time moves 100 times slower, so they've got plenty of time to figure something out. Turns out, Mrs. Pancake's dream is this wild S&M party with whips and props everywhere. Rick, trying to blend in, strips off his lab coat and puts on party gear. Then Morty's sister Summer appears. Apparently Goldenfold has fantasies about her too, but these thoughts are buried so deep in his subconscious that they only show up in these deeper dream layers. A centaur judge shows up and accuses them of disrupting the party, threatening to chop off their heads. Rick quickly knocks out the centaur, and they scramble to find this little girl jumping rope. They dive into her third dream lair to hide, but this kid's dream is the same terrifying scene. This creature called Scary Terry is hunting them down relentlessly. This guy seems to be able to travel between dream layers, and there's nowhere left to run. Rick says they've hit the bottom layer of the dream. Scary Terry keeps chasing them until... wait for it. His shift ends, and he goes home. Rick and Morty follow Scary Terry through the dream back to his home scene and discover that he's having nightmares too. So Rick decides they should go into his personal nightmare to see what's up. In Scary Terry's dream, he's late for class, and he's not wearing any pants. The teacher calls on him, and he can't answer the question. Rick and Morty step up and answer for him, and they even bring him a pair of pants. When Scary Terry wakes up, he's so grateful that he says he'd go through fire and water for them. So Scary Terry helps them travel back through the dream layers, chases away the jump rope girl, and gets them back to Mrs. Pancake's dream. In Goldenfold's dream, Scary Terry charges at the teacher with a rocket launcher. Finally, Rick successfully plants the idea in the teacher's mind, and Morty gets his good grade. Now let me break down what's really happening here philosophically. This storyline uses multiple dream layers to create an allegory about the deep structure of human consciousness. Each dream layer represents a different level of awareness, gradually moving from surface desires down to our most primitive fears. The first dream layer exposes surface-level desires. Goldenfold dreams about getting intimate with his celebrity crush. This represents what Freud called the id, humanity's most primitive impulses. This layer follows the pleasure principle, where individuals can satisfy their fantasies without real-world constraints. The second layer reveals repressed taboos. Mrs. Pancake's dream is an S&M party where Morty's sister Summer appears. This reveals desires so deeply buried that Goldenfold won't even admit them to himself. According to Jung's shadow theory, everyone's subconscious contains a dark side suppressed by moral and social norms. These thoughts are so taboo they must be buried in even deeper dream within dream layers. This layer embodies Lacan's mirror theory. Our self-perception is always fractured. There's a massive gap between our surface self-image and our true inner desires. The math teacher might be respectable in reality, but deep in his consciousness lurk these unspeakable fantasies. The third and fourth layers get at the essence of fear. As we go deeper into the dream layers, the story shifts from desire to fear. The jump rope girl's dream features Scary Terry, this terrifying figure who can travel between dream layers, symbolizing inescapable deep-seated fears. The fact that her dream is always the same terrifying scene reveals a psychological truth. At the collective unconscious level, humans share similar archetypal fears. No matter whose dream it is, similar nightmare archetypes lurk in the deepest places. The most brilliant twist comes in Scary Terry's own dream. This monster who creates terror in other people's dreams is himself afraid of being late to class and not wearing pants. The most common anxiety dreams. This setup contains profound philosophical insight. Those who create fear are often full of fear themselves. As Nietzsche said, when you gaze into the abyss gazes also into you. Scary Terry's dream reveals the essence of human anxiety. Fear of judgment, fear of losing control, fear of exposing vulnerability. Being late to class and not wearing pants symbolizes the internalization of social norms. Even the most terrifying existence cannot escape society's discipline of the individual. This echoes Foucault's theory of discipline and punishment. The dream structure itself is a metaphor about consciousness. The first layer is personal desire beneath the social mask. The second layer is dark impulses repressed by moral taboos. The third and fourth layers are humanity's shared primal fears. By entering Scary Terry's dream and helping him, Rick demonstrates the power of empathy. This act has existential significance. When we understand others' vulnerability and fears, we establish genuine human connection. Sartre said, "Hell is other people," but this episode refutes that view. When we enter another's inner world, understand their pain, and show kindness, maybe hostility can transform into friendship. This storyline ultimately reveals the fragile nature of human consciousness. On the surface, we're strong, rational, and orderly. But deep in our consciousness, everyone is driven by desire and tormented by fear. Human arrogance is built on deliberately ignoring these deep truths. In the other storyline, the Smith family has a dog named Snuffles. Snuffles keeps peeing and pooping everywhere, which really pisses off Morty's dad, Jerry. He rubs the dog's nose in its own urine to punish it. When Rick comes to take Morty on an adventure, Jerry asks if there's some device that could make the dog smarter. Rick says the whole point of having a dog is to feel superior. If dogs are too smart, their owners will feel inadequate. But Jerry insists, so Rick reluctantly finds an intelligence-enhancing helmet. After putting on the helmet, Snuffles can understand human speech and becomes totally obedient to the family. Summer immediately starts filming videos to upload, thinking it's gonna go viral. But Snuffles isn't satisfied. It wants to be able to speak. So Snuffles starts studying the device on its head and improving it. After the upgrade, Snuffles can not only speak, but also use the remote to watch TV. From TV, it learns that its ancestors were noble wolves who've now been reduced to domesticated pet dogs. Snuffles begins questioning the meaning of its existence and decides to break the rules of enslavement. After gaining intelligence, it changes its name to Snowball. Snowball upgrades its equipment again and confronts Jerry with soul-searching questions. Why did you castrate me? Why do you make dogs breed according to human aesthetic standards? Why can I only go outside for walks at designated times? Faced with these questions, the family has no answers, so they get locked in cages. Snowball sets up an intelligence device production line at home, equipping every dog with gear and preparing to launch a war against humanity. When Rick and Morty return home, they find the whole family captured by the dogs. Rick and Morty sneak in and free the three of them, but Jerry insists on defending his territory and runs into the house to pee and mark his domain, but he just gets his nose rubbed in his own urine by the dogs. Snowball captures Morty and says that because Morty was always kind to him, he gets to keep his reproductive organs and can be Snowball's best friend from now on. That night, Snowball has a dream. In the dream, the dog army has conquered the world. Humans have become pets. Every day, truckloads of humans are being castrated. Only Morty enjoys emperor-like treatment. Rick suddenly appears in the dream and wakes Morty up, saying this is Snowball's dream. He gives Morty some pills, saying this will stop the war. After taking the pills, Morty's life is in critical danger. Snowball goes all out to save him, exhausting massive resources. The finance minister says if this continues, the government will go bankrupt. But Snowball says for Morty's health, he's willing to lose everything. Snowball wakes from the dream. Reflecting on the pain he felt, he immediately convened a meeting with his ministers and decided to abandon this war against humanity. He believes attacking humans would only create more cruelty and harm. These enlightened dogs are no longer suited to stay on Earth. They decide to leave the planet and establish a dog civilization in another dimension. Let me unpack the philosophy here. This storyline explores profound questions about power, freedom, and morality through the process of dogs gaining intelligence. It's not just a critique of human centrism, it's a philosophical meditation on the nature of power relations. Snuffles putting on the intelligence helmet is a metaphor for leaping from animal instinct to rational consciousness. This transformation recalls Plato's cave allegory. Snuffles is like the freed prisoner who suddenly sees the real world and realizes he's been living in slavery all along. When it starts questioning, why did you castrate me? Why do you make us breed according to human aesthetics? Why can I only walk at designated times? It demonstrates what Kant called rational enlightenment. Enlightenment is humans emerging from their self-imposed immaturity. Snuffles stops accepting rules imposed by humans, begins using reason to examine its situation, and renames itself Snowball. This awakening process also reveals a cruel truth. Ignorance might be a blessing. Rick warned from the start that dogs being too smart would make their owners feel inadequate. But the deeper meaning is, when the oppressed gain consciousness, they can no longer accept being oppressed. Human domestication of dogs essentially stripped away their autonomous consciousness, making them accept slavery in ignorance. Snowball establishing a dog empire and enslaving humans is a vivid demonstration of Hegel's master-slave dialectic. Hegel believed the relationship between master and slave isn't fixed. It can be reversed. When slaves gain self-awareness and the ability to change their circumstances, the master-slave relationship flips. Snowball goes from being a dog with his nose rubbed in urine to being the ruler deciding humanity's fate. This transformation perfectly demonstrates the reversibility of power relations. But here's a deeper irony. When the oppressed gain power, do they become the new oppressors? The dog empire Snowball adopts the exact same oppressive structure as human society. Castration, captivity, domination. Nietzsche's will to power theory is embodied here. The essence of life is the pursuit of power, and once power is obtained, it tends to replicate old models of domination. This reveals a pessimistic truth. Revolutions often just change who the oppressor is without changing the structure of oppression. The crucial turning point happens in Snowball's dream. This cleverly echoes the first storyline. Dreams once again become tools for revealing truth. By entering Snowball's dream and having Morty take kidney failure drugs, Rick forces Snowball to face a moral dilemma. Should he sacrifice the entire Empire's resources to save one human's life? Snowball chooses to save Morty. This choice reveals a philosophical truth. True morality isn't based on race or species, but on relationships and emotional connections between individuals. Morty was kind to Snowball, and that specific, personal kindness transcends abstract racial hatred. Levinas's ethics of the other is perfectly illustrated here. When we truly face a concrete, vulnerable other, we take on inescapable moral responsibility. Snowball is willing to bankrupt his empire to save Morty because in that moment, Morty is no longer the abstract concept of human but a friend who needs help. This plot also shows the essential difference between Snowball and humans. In the first storyline, when humans go layer by layer deeper, it's all desire and fear. But Snowball, after gaining power, has love for Morty and reluctance to harm others at his core. This is a profound satire of human morality. After waking up, Snowball decides to abandon the war against humanity and chooses to leave Earth to build a new civilization. This decision represents the highest level of moral awakening. Snowball realizes, if we also use violence and slavery to retaliate against humans, how are we different from the humans who oppressed us? This is a philosophical reflection on the cycle of revenge. Gandhi said, "An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind." Snowball chose a third path, neither submission nor revenge, but creating an entirely new civilization. This embodies true freedom, not overthrowing oppressors and taking their place, but transcending the entire oppressor-oppressed binary framework. Sartre said, "Freedom is choice." Snowball's choice proves that true freedom isn't the power to dominate others, but the wisdom to transcend hatred. This ending also responds to Nietzsche's concept of the Superman, transcending the binary opposition of good and evil to create new value systems. The deepest irony in this storyline is, when dogs gain intelligence, they demonstrate a moral level that actually exceeds humanity's. Humans assume they're noble because of their intelligence and have the right to decide other lives' fates. But Snowball's story asks, are we truly noble because of intelligence, or merely arrogant because of power? Human domination of dogs is built on contingency. Humans happen to gain higher intelligence through evolution, but this accidental advantage doesn't grant humans moral privilege. Kant's categorical imperative requires us to act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. If we don't want to be enslaved when we lose our power advantage, then when we have power advantage, we shouldn't enslave others. The dream line explores the deep structure of human consciousness. Desire on the surface, fear in the depths. Desire drives us to pursue. Fear limits our actions. Humans are trapped in this desire-fear cycle, just like being trapped in multiple dream layers. The dog line explores the nature of power relations. Freedom and slavery aren't absolute states, but can be transformed. More importantly, true freedom isn't flipping oppressive relationships, but transcending oppression itself. Both storylines point to a core critique: human arrogance. In dreams, humans hide fear and insecurity even in the deepest parts of their consciousness, yet in reality they consider themselves masters of all things. In the relationship with dogs, humans assume they have the right to decide other lives' fates. But ironically, when dogs gain intelligence, they demonstrate a moral level that surpasses humanity. Snowball ultimately chooses compassion and departure rather than revenge and domination. Both storylines reach their turning points through the act of entering another's inner world. Rick enters Scary Terry's dream, understands his fear, and turns an enemy into a friend. Rick enters Snowball's dream, awakens Snowball's emotional memory of Morty, and stops the war. This reveals a profound ethical principle. True understanding requires entering another's subjective world. Philosopher Thomas Nagel asked a famous question, "What is it like to be a bat?" This episode provides an answer. Only when we truly enter another's consciousness and experience their fears, pain, and joy can we establish genuine mutual understanding and respect. This episode ultimately poses a philosophical proposition about respect. The measure of a civilization's height isn't in how it treats the strong, but how it treats the weak. Human domination of dogs, like the absolute power dreamers have in dreams, seems natural, but when we examine this power relationship, we find it's built on contingency. True morality shouldn't depend on power dynamics, but should be based on respect for all sentient life. What this episode ultimately conveys isn't nihilism or cynicism, but constructive reflection. We need to re-examine humanity's relationship with other life forms, not out of fear of retaliation, but out of genuine moral awakening. As Snowball demonstrated, the only way to transcend oppression is to refuse to become the new oppressor. This is true civilizational progress. Not technological advancement, but moral elevation. But sadly, in reality, humans are too arrogant to even bother discussing morality. Social Darwinism and survival of the fittest run rampant. Morality, tolerance, and forgiveness are instead seen as weakness. To this day, humanity still resorts to force. Humans conquer with violence, rule with violence, and dig their own graves with violence. This frenzy is a disease, and it will bury all civilization.